Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, trust me, a lot to talk about today. Huge stories over the weekend, but I've got to say this. Chief Spreading Bull, as I like to call her, Pocahontas, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Granny Warren, is one of the most destructive senators in the history of the United States. She is a far leftist, and she's proud of it. She's an anti-capitalist. She's a so-called trust buster, or an antitrust. She's an antitrust leftist, and she's a socialist crusader. And one of her crusades was to prevent a merger between Spirit Airlines and JetBlue. In fact, she made it a cause célèbre to destroy that merger, to nix it, to prevent it from ever taking place. Well, now, this is the wreckage of her decision. Spirit Airlines, over the weekend, turned the lights off. It is now finished. It's dead. It was a low-fare carrier. In fact, I flew on it once. To be honest, you don't pay much for your ticket, and you don't get much. It's very bare bones, or at least it was very bare bones. I thought the seats were hard like a rock, to be honest. They pack you in like a sardine, like in a sardine can, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to fly the plane if you don't want to fly on the plane. The fact is, it was cheaper than many of the other rivals. It flew into these smaller airports that the other big four, the big ones, United, American, Delta, don't want to fly into. And for many consumers, especially those who are pinching pennies and have to watch every single, every dollar that they spend, Spirit Airlines, like Southwest, like JetBlue, people liked Spirit Airlines. It is now gone. 14,000 jobs finished. Over 30-plus smaller airports now are not going to get service, regional service that Spirit Airlines was providing. It is now damaging the entire airline industry. People have going from working to welfare. And the ripple effects are being felt everywhere across the economy. And yet, just so that you know what happened, in 2022, JetBlue, another one of these low-cost airfare airlines, offered to buy Spirit Airlines in a merger. $3.8 billion, by the way, all in cash. Cash, the whole thing, $3.8 billion on the table. And the two airlines would then merge. Spirit knew this is exactly what it needed to survive. The shareholders said yes. The union said yes. Everybody at Spirit Airlines said yes. Elizabeth Warren, Chief Fullable, said no. And then she began a campaign to nix the merger between Spirit Airlines and JetBlue. And she lobbied then Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. She lobbied Biden's Department of Justice. They then sued. They took it to federal court. And guess what? Some left-wing hack judge killed the merger. And the argument that Chief Fullable made, I want you to think about this, because this is an example of socialism in action. This is what progressives do. This is what the hard left do. They destroy. Her argument was that by combining JetBlue and Spirit Airlines, that on paper, on paper, it would cost consumers $1 billion. And she, as this big anti-big business, antitrust, left-wing socialist crusader, she was saving the people money. Let me tell you what really happened. JetBlue had to fold. Sorry, Spirit Airlines, my bad, had to fold. As I said, 14,000 jobs gone. Fewer people working means higher taxes for everybody else. Careers, pilots, flight attendants, you name it, destroyed. But it was even worse than that. Because that Spirit Airlines went into all of these smaller airports, you know who else got hurt? The people who work at those airports. Baggage crews, people who check tickets at the gate, the coffee shops, the car rentals, the restaurants, the hotels, the people who pump fuel, all of them got destroyed because this merger was not allowed to happen. You know how many jobs that's cost? 40,000 jobs. Not 14, just from Spirit. In total, 40,000 jobs. And to understand the moonbat mind, again, forgive me, how stupid, how destructive, how self-defeating, the combination of JetBlue and Spirit together would have controlled 9%, 9%, not 20, not 30, not 40, not 50, 9% of the total market. This was the quote-unquote monopoly that Chief Fullable was railing against. While the big four, who, by the way, line her campaign coffers, okay, they line her pockets to buy her silence and complicity. The big four, as I mentioned, Delta, United, American, all of them, they control 80% of the market. So 9% is a monopoly, but 80% is not a monopoly. Hello? Hello? Chief? No, this doesn't compute. You can't do basic math, Chief? And who do you think now is going to try to swallow up some of these routes? You guessed it. Delta is already coming in there trying to swallow up some of these routes. So what did this do? It made the big four even bigger, even wealthier, even stronger. And just so that you know, fares now that that Spirit used to take care of have exploded. You want to fly to Oakland, you want to fly to Newark, New Jersey, you want to fly to Kansas City, okay? You want to fly, by the way, you want to fly to Providence, Rhode Island, since we're going to keep it a little bit local. Everything has gone up 66%, 80%, 100%, 150%. So, in the end, consumers get less choice. Prices actually go up. The fares went up for most consumers. We now have less routes for planes to go and airlines to go. Smaller airports got shafted. And 14,000 airline employees lost their jobs. 40,000 extra in these smaller airports lost their jobs. And this woman is taking a freaking victory lap. As she slowly, and the left has been doing this now for decades, as she slowly destroys and takes a sledgehammer to the airline industry. And this is, this, as I said on X last night, this is Massachusetts socialism in action. And all of it from a crazy, far leftist con woman who lied about her Native American heritage. She doesn't have a freaking ounce of Indian blood. And more importantly, this is a woman who never met payroll a day in her life. Has this woman ever owned? She's never owned a lemonade stand. What does she know about running a business? She's never met payroll. She's never had to deal in a competitive market. And she overrode the express desires, because remember, JetBlue wanted to buy out Spirit or have them merge. Spirit said yes. The workers said yes. The flight attendants said yes. 617-266-6868 is the number. You can also text the Kuhner Man, 70470. This is from 781. Jeff, from what I read over the weekend, Elizabeth Warren sold her Spirit stock 2 weeks before the stock tanked for a tidy profit as a consequence of her attacks. If this is true, Warren learned her lesson well from Nancy Pelosi. Bingo. Well, she's a crook. She's a crook. Just like Pelosi is a crook. But this is what I find most despicable. She wrecks an airline almost single-handedly. And we're talking tens and tens and tens of thousands of jobs gone. People's lives destroyed and ruined. And she cashes out, knowing that her actions, in particular influencing Buttigieg at the time, the transportation secretary, and Biden's DOJ. And once Biden's DOJ sued Spirit for the merger with JetBlue, bang, its stock started to go down. She knew this lawsuit was coming, and she sold. She sold, and she put a lot of money in her pocket. That's what this woman does. That's why she's worth north of $25 million. The supposed anti-capitalist, anti-1%er. Okay? So that's the kind of phony, fraud, and con woman you're dealing with. And now, you should see her now. She's so proud of the fact that she buried Spirit Airlines. What are you happy about? At the pilots who are now on the welfare rolls? On the flight attendants who don't have jobs? On people in baggage? On people, mechanics who work on planes? Who fuel up the planes? The people who work at the ticket counter? All those employees gone? All those workers gone? Most of them now on welfare? And this is your idea of quote-unquote progress? And I'm telling you, this is what leftists do. This is Marxism. This is what happens when you have people who want to declare war, quote, on the market. Because you see, they know how to run a company better than people who actually, I don't know, work in the private sector, have, own businesses in the private sector, have actual real life experience in the private sector, who actually, I don't know, build airlines, manage airlines, put all this together on a daily basis and hold it and sustain it over many, many years. Unlike this hack. So this is an example of what the left does when they get power. And notice how they all line their pockets in the process. You see, the poor airline workers, those poor flight the flight attendants, the union guys who are taking the luggage off of the plane, and and making sure that your bags arrive at the terminal. They're out of work. They didn't get paid. They're done. They're finished. Okay, they're lucky if they get a welfare check. But she she got paid. 617-266-6868 is the number. Dave in Pennsylvania. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. How you doing? This affects me directly. I got family members that used to work for Spirit.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, Jeff, and Chief Hiawatha. Now, Jeff, can you honestly tell me if there's any non-crooked Democrats in our country? They're so fake they make pro wrestling look real, Jeff, other than my Senator Fetterman.
Well, yeah, Dave, you're dead on. And I want to ask you this. What do your family members say? Do they feel betrayed by Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, they had good jobs. A couple of them were military pilots. One was a naval aviator, one was an Air Force aviator. And you're not going to find better pilots in the world than naval or Air Force aviators, Jeff. And other than, the ones that go to civilian training schools. But no, Jeff, all this was with Pete Buttigieg lining his wallet, Chief Hiawatha lighting as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, didn't Mark Wayne Mullen, our DHS secretary, come from Oklahoma, the same state where she was, and he came and showed proof that she wasn't Native American, Jeff? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're right. No, you're right. Well, she did a test. She was so stupid, she did a blood test. And the blood test showed she doesn't have a drop of Native American blood. I mean, that's so obvious.
Yeah.
So she lied. She claimed she was an Indian to get jobs at the University of Pennsylvania, to get work at Harvard, and those positions were specifically allocated for Native Americans. So not only did she perpetrate a fraud, she literally stole a jobs, from actual Native American Indians. But they were paying her $350,000 a year to teach one class. That's who the idiots in this state elected. And now she claims she knows airlines. She knows nothing. And now she's destroyed an entire airline. I mean, and by the way, she wants a big position in the next Democrat administration. She wants to be like, Secretary of Transportation or Secretary of Commerce or Secretary of the Treasury. Can you imagine, Dave, this woman running our economy? She'll do to the whole country what she did to Spirit Airlines. Let me ask all of you, what do you make now of the end of Spirit Airlines and the jobs? And there are a lot of jobs that have now been lost. And really the irony is prices have gone up. Fares have gone up. There is now less competition. Tickets are more expensive. And even worse, I'm getting emails from people texting, and by the way, texts as well, saying, Jeff, I'm stranded, or I have to go to my daughter's graduation. She's graduating from college. I was going to fly Spirit. Now I've got to get another airline at the last possible minute, and I am paying through the nose. This is costing me a ton of money, all because of what Elizabeth Warren and the Biden administration did, blocking a perfectly fine merger between JetBlue and Spirit, a merger that both companies accepted, both unions accepted, both shareholders accepted, and would have kept so many of these routes open, these smaller airports open, and most, if not all, of the jobs would still be there today. So she saved, Hiawatha saved on paper an imaginary $1 billion, while her actions in the real world have cost us at least 10, 20 times as much. As I said, 14,000 jobs at Spirit, gone. Another 40,000 jobs at all of these local, regional, smaller airports that they used to service. You name it, from baggage to fuel to restaurants to car rentals to hotels to ticket agents to all gone. That's 40,000 jobs on top of the 14,000 jobs. I mean, this woman's seriously, she's like a walking human wrecking ball. And now let's go back to Dave in Pennsylvania. Dave says he's got family members who used to work for Spirit. They were in the military. They were military aviators, and they've lost their jobs. Pilots. And, they liked working at Spirit. They had a good salary, good benefits. And they can't stand the name, just to mention Elizabeth Warren, the sight of her, because of what she's done to them, their livelihoods, and their family. Dave, do we have you, my friend? Are you still there?
Yes, Jeff, I'm right here, buddy.
Dave, so what are smaller airports now going to have to do? What are consumers who now are going to be paying even more for the same flights, or some of them, those flights will no longer be offered. Those routes are now going to be canceled. So what are people going to do? What are your family members going to do? Are they looking for work? Do they think they can find work?
As far as I know, Jeff, I haven't spoken to my cousins, but I can tell you this, Jeff. Going back to High Chief Hiawatha, that clamor up in Maine, or the guy that is living off his parents, Graham Plattner, or Graham, whatever he calls himself.
Yeah, Plattner, the avowed communist and the guy with the Nazi tattoo on his chest, yes.
The other senator, the Republican out there, that Rhino, is any better than him or her, but, I mean, Jeff, come on, the guy, Graham Plattner, looks like the perfect guy for Elizabeth Warren. He looks like a used car salesman that's got an overgrown beard, Jeff. That's what he looks like. But anyways, Jeff, I'll end it on this because I know you held me over and I know you get other calls to get to, Jeff. Jeff, this is just like what happened to President Trump with the banks when Tish James is going after him. Even the bank said that President Trump never defrauded the banks. Just like with this stuff, but the truth is never good enough for these communicrats, these satanic Democrats, Jeff. All right? They're nothing but the purest form of evil. I mean, Jeff, I wouldn't be surprised if these Democrats already have 666 in their forehead or in their hand, Jeff. And to the voters of Massachusetts, what the frig are you people thinking voting for Elizabeth Warren over Scott Brown? I'm not saying Scott Brown was a perfect Republican either, but Jeff, I mean, come on. These people got to stop. Wait, this is part of the reason why I left Massachusetts, because of stupid, dumbass voters, Jeff. And I'm not saying everybody in Mass, just the ones that listen to the Globe, read the Herald, the liberal media. I mean, the Herald used to be a good paper, Jeff. Now they've gone by the wayside, So, what are you going to do? You're
completely right. You're on fire. Dave, you're on fire. And thank you very, very much for that call. Oh, he's completely right. Look, even from a pure self-interest point of view, okay? Just pure self-interest. What has Elizabeth Warren done for the state of Massachusetts? Seriously. Oh, I've said this about Ted Kennedy many times. Can't stand the guy, never would have voted for him. He's a murderer. He's a stone-cold murderer. But at least he brought home the bacon. Roads, bridges, tunnels, airports, schools, whatever. He brought back the pork. Okay. You can see at least a self-interest there in voting for that guy. But what does she do? Nothing except destroy airlines and destroy companies and line her pockets in the process. That's all this woman does. 617-266-6868. What do you make of the fall, the death of Spirit Airlines and the loss of all these jobs? Plus, so many passengers now stranded because the airline just turned the lights off at 3 a.m. over the weekend. And fares are going up, and people who have to get places, like I've mentioned, this one man was emailing me saying, Jeff, you phony, you fraud, you, Elizabeth Warren. I've got to pay almost an extra $1,000 for a ticket because I was booked a flight on Spirit months ago and now it's gone. And so at the last possible moment, I had to get a ticket from another airline, and I'm paying an arm and a leg. And this is what Elizabeth Warren has done to me and my family. 617-266-6868. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff, and happy Monday.
Happy Monday, my friend.
Well, not so happy if you're a Spirit Airlines employee, I have to say that.
That's right.
But, Jeff, Not only did she steal a job from a Native American, claiming that she was a Native American, but she just put 54,000 people out of work. Now, Jeff, call me crazy, but will the people of Massachusetts still go to the polls and vote for Elizabeth Warren? I'm going to say absolutely. When are these people going to wake up, Jeff?
Well, Mark, I have to ask, in all seriousness, why do they keep reelecting her? No, really, honestly. She's shrill. She's an obvious fraud. She's, even on the Spirit Airlines deal, she made money. She's always making money. I'm going to get to some other incredible messages and texts that I've been getting, emails from people about how she's always making money, that she's now one of the wealthiest members of Congress. She lives in a mansion, by the way, surrounded by a wall. She hates a wall for the United States, but she has a wall for herself and her husband. This woman has done nothing but enrich herself at the expense of taxpayers. She's, and she grandstands in front of the camera. She, plays the socialist, the redistributionist, as she gets wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And she's done absolutely zero, and I mean zero, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So why do they keep reelecting this, honestly, this socialist hag, this obvious fraud and con woman, the phony Indian? Why do they keep reelecting this phony Indian? I mean, what's your theory, Mark?
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I believe, and I think you believe this too, and a lot of other people believe this, anybody with half a brain would believe this, is that this is why I always say that these people were never legitimately elected, Jeff. That is my opinion. Have you noticed every time there's an election in Massachusetts, as soon as 8 o'clock comes, at 8:02, they're already calling it? I mean, Jeff, I don't believe that they're legitimately elected, because how can anybody support any of these policies that they have that are absolutely outrageous?
Amen. Amen. Mark, thank you very much for that call. And in particular, the unions, like union Democrats or lunch pail Democrats, as they call them. How can you vote for a woman who just keeps destroying not just jobs, but good-paying union jobs? That's the part I can't wrap my mind around. So you want to vote for someone who's got a target on your back? Okay. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very, very quick reset. Spirit Airlines finished. They would have been saved in a huge merger with JetBlue. Cash offer. Elizabeth Warren said niet, and she led a campaign to defeat it. Now Spirit Airlines has gone under. 14,000 jobs have been lost. Also jobs at many regional airports that they serviced. 40,000 of those jobs gone. Fares are up. Less choice, less competition. So Elizabeth Warren, by the way, she put an incredible pressure campaign on Buttigieg, the transportation secretary at the time, to block the merger between JetBlue and Spirit. And then she urged the DOJ, in fact, wrote letter after letter after letter, pressuring Biden's Department of Justice to sue, to stop this merger. And then when they did sue, and it ended up, blocking the merger, she called it a, quote, win for the Biden administration. Okay? Or as she put it, that Spirit's collapse is a Biden win for flyers. And this was a couple years ago. And she was saying, oh, it's in a death spiral now. Good, we're going to finish off an airline. Well, she got what she wanted. So just so that you know, I mentioned the 54,000 jobs gone. But because of Spirit's collapse, 90 routes have been abandoned. 90 routes. And the routes that are still there are up. I mean, you're paying through the nose now. Prices have gone way up. So, just so that you know, Oakland, California to Newark, New Jersey, $135 was originally under Spirit, now $288. Fort Myers in Florida to San Juan, Puerto Rico, under Spirit, $92 a ticket. That's a good deal, by the way. To $219 now. Kansas City to Newark, up 66%. So that's what she's doing to consumers. Okay, that's what this moron has done to consumers. And by the way, as many people are pointing out, cheap carriers in many markets, you know what they do to fares? They bring them down across the board. When Southwest really took off in the 1990s, it saved Americans. I don't want to just keep throwing figures, but $68 billion over 20 years. Okay? $68 billion. I'm not trying to shill for Southwest. I'm just saying these cheap carriers, they drive prices down, which is good for consumers. Now, you know, it's not luxury flying. I mean, I've flown Southwest, I've flown JetBlue, I've flown Spirit. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, my rear end kills me after a flight. Okay, and my knees hurt because you're so tight and compact. But, you know, that's my decision. I mean, I could have flown another airline. So Grace and I and the kids, we try to save money, and so we fly the cheaper carriers. Well, now she's blown one to pieces, right to smithereens. And the woman is taking credit. This is what I find amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, I'm telling you, this is what she's going to do. She's going to blame everyone but herself. She's going to blame billionaires, millionaires, capitalism, Trump, AI, taxpayers, you name it. Anyone, everyone, but her. But her. So for her, this is winning. This is what socialists call winning. If you call this winning, I don't want to know what you call losing. 617-266-6868. Now, very, very quick. This is from Nancy, and she makes an absolutely excellent, excellent point. Good morning, Jeff. Remember the housing crisis under Obama? Oh, yes, I do. Chief Spreading Bull was buying up foreclosed homes and reselling them at a profit. She really loves other people's misery. She's sick. She's sick. By the way, you're completely right. So when Bush Obama crashed the housing market and people lost their homes, they lost everything. There were foreclosures left, right, and center. She was a house flipper. She would go around taking advantage exactly of people's misery and misfortune, buy low, and then put $5,000, $10,000 into the house, and then flip it and make a nice profit. The one who goes on about the evils of capitalism and business. So she's profited off people's misery in housing. Now she sold stock just before Spirit Airlines tanked. And she was the one who did the tanking. So, in other words, it was a scheme to get rich. And Pelosi has done it. I mean, they all do it. I mean, that's the amazing thing about these members of Congress. There's all this insider trading, and they will literally destroy companies knowing it's going to make them phenomenally wealthy. And all of the wreckage, the collateral damage to the economy, to airports, to airfares, to consumers, to jobs, to unions, to employees. They don't care. Blank you. Blank you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Victor in Georgetown. Thanks for holding, Victor, and welcome.
Good to hear your voice on Monday morning there, Jeff. How you doing?
Thank you, Victor. What's on your mind, my friend?
So here's the inside scoop on Hiawatha and the merger being shot down by regarding Spirit, no pun intended. Spirit was going to be acquired by JetBlue, not because it was valuable as a operating company. They wanted to acquire it because it had a number of new Boeing jets that they had the option to buy. Spirit had the option to buy, and in JetBlue buying it, Jeff, they would then get the new aircraft, which is what they needed. So they were willing to put a boatload of money. Now, Hiawatha and the gang, they know that, so they know it's not going to go through. So they take a short position in the stock market, knowing it's not going to go through. And then when it gets canceled, the stock plummets, and then they just, make a fortune. But this is nothing new. Pelosi has shown us that over 20-some-odd years or 40 years or however long she's done it. And here's the answer to your question, Jeff. Why do they elect people like Hiawatha? It's because, and you don't understand it, and your listeners don't understand it, it's because you're not a criminal mind. You don't have the criminal mindset that these people have. When you hear of the billions of dollars being stolen from legitimate systems to try and help the poor people in this state, billions of dollars get stolen, recirculated to the operators within the state, the NGOs and whatever. They get paid to run, they're captains of the precincts to get people out to vote, to mail in the votes, to pick up the votes. It's a system of corruption, Jeff, that has lasted for decades and decades, and there really is no solution in Massachusetts other than moving the hell to New Hampshire, because these people, the Democrat operatives, own this state.
Victor, do you think this Ponzi scheme, as you've described it, this boondoggle, which is what Massachusetts is one giant boondoggle, ultimately these things are unsustainable. They just are. Already the deficit is out of control, the debt is out of control, investors are fleeing, businesses are fleeing, taxpayers are fleeing. We are now ranked last, dead last, 50 out of 50 in a state to start a business or a company. So in the end, you need tax makers to take care of the tax takers. And once you start running out of makers, there's just too many takers. And then the whole system goes poof, it just collapses. Do you think Massachusetts is eventually going to go broke? I mean, literally bankrupt, just collapse on itself? Because how does this system sustain itself? In the long term, I don't see this as viable. I mean, do you?
They don't care about the long term. As long as they are in power, they're going to be. It's like being on a boat that's sinking, Jeff. Right? You're out at sea. You're 50 miles out at sea. As long as you're on the upper part of the sinking boat, you know what? You don't worry too much about the people on the bottom part. They do not care about the people working. I guarantee you, 80% of the people working at Spirit voted for her or voted for Democrats. They are too busy playing Minecraft or whatever they play on their computers to pay attention to become the people that liberate a state, the people that make a difference. They're not willing to do it. They're not organized. They don't want to get organized because they're receiving food stamps or heating allowances, or they've got government housing. Speaking of which, let me just parenthetically, Seattle just buried this huge, very successful apartment complex that was making a profit, and after their regulations to, quote, help the people, they're losing $2.5 million a year. They don't care, Jeff, as long as they are partying, enjoying the sunsets at your expense, drinking that wine. They do not care a whit because they're going to get federal bailouts wherever and whenever they're available. Like, for instance, they won't allow an audit in the state of Massachusetts. Every red flag in the world. What if you were running a company, Jeff, and you said in the IRS came in and said, we want to do an audit, and you said, oh no way are you ever going to do an audit here. That's against our company rules. They would say there's something wrong at Jeff's store.
Oh yeah, they tell me to go fly a kite. They say he's a crook. Of course, they say he's a crook. He's a crook, and he's hiding how much they're stealing. You're absolutely dead on. And by the way, great call. Victor, thank you so much for that call. And it's not just the audit that they're suppressing, because it's going to reveal the billions and billions and billions that they're stealing and siphoning off, but also the voting rolls. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, just very, very quickly, because it goes to why does someone like Chief Fullabull, Chief Spreading Bull, how come she keeps getting reelected? Even though, look at the damage that this woman is causing. Or, all these other Democrats, Ed Markey, Healy, you name it. So here you have the Department of Justice is asking for the voting rolls. They say, look, we just want to take a look at your voting rolls. That's all. That's it. And Secretary of State Bill Galvin is refusing to hand it over. Well, if you've got clean voting rolls, what are you afraid of? I'll tell you why he doesn't want to hand over the full, complete voting rolls. Because it's going to show, like they just did in North Carolina. In North Carolina, they found tens and tens of thousands of quote-unquote dead people on the voting rolls. And guess what? Those dead people have been voting for years. It's incredible. Dead people vote in North Carolina, as an example. They looked at the voting rolls and they go, well, this person's been dead for 60 years. But this person keeps voting in every election. How the hell is this possible? So this is what Galvin and the Democrats are trying to protect. You hand over the voting rolls, and you're going to see dead people are voting, illegals are voting, non-citizens are voting. Everybody's freaking voting. And I believe that that's a major reason why so many of these crooked, corrupt, phony Democrats, like the chief, keep getting reelected, and not just reelected. I made this point in the race with Jeff Deal. I'm like, when Jeff Deal challenged her. And so I'm waiting for the results. It's 8 o'clock. 30 seconds later, not even a minute, 30 seconds later, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 10, Channel 25, across the board, every one of them. We're projecting Elizabeth Warren to be, retain her seat as the incumbent senator from Massachusetts. I'm like, how is that possible? The polls just closed. They haven't even started counting yet. It's only 30 seconds. And I remember I ended up calling the Deal campaign. I'm like, Jeff, it's a minute. I said, it's just been a minute since 8 o'clock. They've already said Warren's the winner. Like, what? The whole campaign staff. What? The fix is in. That's why the voting rolls have to remain closed. Nobody can see them. They have to remain in secret. And that's why they don't want to remove a single illegal. And they don't want to purge those voting rolls. And number two, that audit of the state legislature can never take place. Because that's how they steal our money to pay off the illegals to keep voting. You see how the scam works? And by the way, an airline after airline, industry after industry, right down the toilet. Right down the toilet. As they just keep selling us out. 617-266-6868. Andy in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Andy, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Listen, you got to get out. You got to get out of Massachusetts. I live up on the line here. When I throw rocks out of my garden, they land in Massachusetts. Okay, with the rest of the dumb rock politicians that all belong down there, okay? We'll build you a beautiful house up here. You'll have I have 6 acres. You'll love it, okay? I'm literally a half an hour from your job. You just jump on 95, you're there. You'd love it. The only thing is, when you leave in your driveway, you'd have to pass my signs, okay? Elizabeth Warren, build the wall with Pelosi on the other side of it. Elizabeth Warren, Liz, real Indians drink whiskey, not beer. Remember the skit she did with her husband about the honey, would you like a beer? We'll get you a beer out of the refrigerator. These people are phonies, phonies, phonies. I'm so glad I live in New Hampshire, right on the line, like you and Rhode Island line, same thing. But you got to get out of Mass. It's your blood pressure is going to go down. I'm telling you, Jeff.
Andy, do you think there will be or should there be an investigation into Elizabeth Warren for obviously selling stock after she did everything in her power to tank Spirit Airlines? And after a while, look, I mean, when you lead a crusade like she did, that ends up costing so many people their livelihoods, their jobs, damaging these smaller regional communities that rely on these smaller airports. Shouldn't politicians be held accountable for this? I mean, you don't just go around destroying things the way she did and lining her pockets in the process. And then she just, it's like just move on. It's like these vulture capitalists, these hedge fund people that just, they take over companies, they hollow them out, they destroy them, they sell them off, and then they move on. And they just go to company after company after company. And the fact that people lose their jobs, their pensions, their benefits, their livelihoods, they don't care. As long as they're making money, and they just keep on moving. I think there's got to be a point where we hold politicians accountable. Or am I wrong, Andy?
They just capitalize on the working people, and they just line their pockets till they can't get enough. She can have that palace that she lives in with the walls, but they just can't get enough. They just can't get enough. It's like they're addicted to money. She's chief wrecking ball. She is just like a human wrecking ball. People like that, Nancy Pelosi, same thing, lined her pockets with all those trust funds and companies that they invested in because they knew where they were going. They're crooks. They're just absolute crooks, and they got to go.
Amen. Amen.
Jeff?
Andy, thank you so much for that call. God bless you, my friend. 617-266-6868. Let me throw this mini log on the fire and tell me if you guys, if you in Kuhner country, if you agree or disagree with this. She's taking money from the big airlines. Okay, that's a matter of public record. So from the so-called Big Four. One of the things the Big Four loathes and despises is competition from these cheaper carriers. Okay? JetBlue, Spirit, there's others. Now, it seems to me that she's doing, now, in the name of fighting a monopoly, she's actually protecting and perpetrating a monopoly. The monopoly of the Big Four. Delta, as I've said now, they've pounced aggressively on some of these routes that Spirit used to have. So it's even going to make the Big Four even stronger and even bigger. Okay, the Big Four airlines here in the United States. But it seems to me that what she does, and she does it in the pharmaceutical, by the way, Big Pharma has no better friend than the chief. Pfizer, Moderna, she will protect Big Pharma to the hilt. I could go almost sector by sector by sector. So she talks a big antitrust, anti-big business game. But man, does she take their money. And she destroys every single upstart. And the reason why the Big Four can't stand the cheap carriers, obviously, because they run these local routes or these regional routes, and that by offering much lower fares, it forces the Big Four to drop their prices, which eats into their profits. So it's almost as if she wanted to tank Spirit in order to help her benefactors, whether it be Delta, American, United, take your pick. In other words, the big four are the big winners out of this. And of course, Elizabeth Warren, because she made money off of the stock sale. So what I'm saying is, did Elizabeth Warren deliberately destroy an airline in order to protect the more powerful airlines? You phony, you fraud, you. Okay, let me ask all of you. I'm just curious, have you ever flown Spirit Airlines? Are you going to miss that Spirit Airlines is no longer around? And what about some of these other more cheap carriers? JetBlue, and there's so many, but do you fly them? Do you like them? Do you like to fly them? And do you think that more competition is better for airlines? And just generally overall, am I the only one? But to me, I remember flying in the 70s and 80s. It used to be such a much more pleasant experience. Just from the seats, they were bigger, there was more leg room, it was more comfortable. The food that they served on the airlines was much better. More drinks, more food. The service was friendlier. Just in every way, shape, or form. It wasn't so stressful to fly. You weren't packed in like a bunch of sardines in a can. You didn't have flight attendants who were always angry and grumpy. You didn't feel like they were just trying to whip you into a seat and, fly you off and then push you out. It's like airline, I used to enjoy to fly. Now, if I can avoid it, I will. It doesn't matter the airline. Whether it's a cheap airline or one of the more bigger airlines, it's just flying used to be so much fun. And it was enjoyable, and kids loved it. The parents loved it. Now, people are very stressed when they fly. People are rude. I find people are disrespectful on airlines. I'm not just talking about the flight attendants. I'm talking about even the people who fly, the passengers. So, and then you got TSA, where you got to wait, sometimes hours to get through security. It takes forever to board a plane. I don't know. It's hectic. It's stressful. It's unpleasant. It's also, by the way, become expensive, extremely expensive, and you get nothing for your money. And so if I can avoid to fly, I don't fly. I'd rather drive. Even if it's a much longer drive, I'm comfortable in my car. I can spread out. I can stop off and, have a good meal. I don't know. It's just, listen to music, talk to my wife, talk to my kids, whatever it may be. It's just, if I can drive and avoid flying, I will. 617-266-6868 is the number. Mel in New York. Thanks for holding, Mel, and welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Mel.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, you have to excuse me for that pick in Saturday Derby with those two horses.
That was a great race, by the way, Mel. That was, talk about a photo finish, huh?
Oh, yeah. He come running hard, boy. He was picking them off one at a time through the stretch. Yes, Sherry DeVoe, she's from my hometown here in Saratoga Springs. And the first woman who've ever won the Kentucky Derby.
That's right. First female trainer.
A milestone.
Yep. You're completely right, Mel.
Yeah. But to get back to your subject, to your topic, you board the airline, you give the flight attendant a nod, a wink, and a hello. They'll say that guy or that woman is one that they'll take care of. The other ones that are coming in, they're all rude and things of that nature. They're not going to get the best treatment. Believe me. Believe that. But, to go back to Hiawatha, she's not the only one. All these politicians, they hide behind their office. and they feel as though they can get away with anything. And to threaten one of them, like, to say, I'm sick and tired of you, I'd like to take you out behind the barn or something like that. Now you're looking at a federal offense. So, I mean, they've got the the law, not the law on their side, because the law is so corrupt, and they can't really, do anything as far as but follow what these criminals want them to do. It's like the law enforcement, they're servants. They go to work, they go to Washington or any state who is elected, you elect them, they're supposed to be working for you, not you working for them. They've got it all backwards. And, I'll go back to the old subject that I brought up last week. Election integrity. You don't think that Lyle, as crooked as she is being elected fairly. I mean, Ray Charles can see that with the way that she treats her constituents, the way that she does. Who the hell would want to vote for something like that? They got to be stealing. They've got the machines on their side. And that's what I said. You got to get rid of these doggone machines and go back to the old way of voting. You walk into the booth, you pull the curtain, you flip the switch, and boom, boom, boom. And, how much really those really weren't foolproof either, but still, you had a better shot.
Oh, yeah, no, they were much more honest. No, Mel, those are paper ballots. Let's get rid of the machines, go back to paper ballots, same-day voting, voter ID, and you've got, in other words, the way we used to vote. And you're going to have much cleaner elections, much less corrupt, cleaner, fairer elections. And then someone like Elizabeth Warren or Ed Markey or Healy, they wouldn't have it's a lifetime tenure. That's it. They can generate as many illegal votes as they need to keep that person in power. It's obvious. That's why within 30 seconds they announced the Democrat as the winner. And the only question then is, how much of a margin do they want to pour it on? And that's why we have to stop it. And that's why I'm pushing for the Save America Act, which John Thune, by the way, doesn't want to vote on now. Let's pass the Save America Act. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, but it'll go a long way. It'll force the states to purge their voting rolls, whether they want to or not. Every state will have to have voter ID. I mean, it does many things that are going to clean up the rolls and restore election integrity. And now you know why the Democrats are fighting it tooth and nail. What I don't understand is why John Thune won't fight for it as well. Does he want the Republicans to lose in November? Does he want the Democrats to continue to engage in rampant fraud and election theft? I mean, do the Republicans love to keep losing and having it stolen from right underneath their nose? So anyway, as usual, Mel, you're absolutely spot on. Have Elizabeth Warren run in an actual free and fair election, and I think you would get a very different result. Okay, let me ask you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Should President Trump save Spirit Airlines? Should the president step in and say, I mean, I know it's now, it's a dead airline, but he still has time to resuscitate it, save it, if he so decides or so chooses. Should Trump step in and have the federal government save Spirit Airlines? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X, and boy, was I active on X last night. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, KUHNER. I'm honestly torn on this, truly torn on this. Part of me says no, I don't like federal bailouts in general. I just don't. I don't think the taxpayers should be bailing out companies. I believe it's up to the market to decide whether a company is a viable, efficient, profitable business that provides a good quality service at a reasonable price to its customers. On the other hand, so the answer, instinctively for me would be niet. No, don't do it. But the way Spirit, and by the way, Spirit was not, it wasn't a great run airline. As I said, I've flown Spirit. I can't say I had a great experience. The airfare was cheap. That's about it. But, it wasn't a pleasant flying experience. So I can't say, the service was wonderful on Spirit Airlines. It's a shame the company went under. The problem is that the private sector was going to work with Spirit. JetBlue put an all-cash $3.8 billion offer on the table in 2022. They were going to merge with Spirit. And those jobs would have been saved. Those smaller airports would still be, wouldn't be affected. All those routes would still be functioning. And I'm telling you, fares would be much, much cheaper than they are today. So the consumer, the flyer, wins. The regional airports keep the business. The people who work in Spirit, from the pilots to the flight attendants to the baggage handlers, all of it, they keep their jobs. And it would have been all private sector money. And the government stepped in particular, the chief, Elizabeth Warren, and then Buttigieg, that idiot, and then, of course, Biden's Department of Justice, and they wrecked it. They sued and sued and sued, and they essentially prevented the merger from taking place. So the government intervened to destroy the market, to undermine the private sector. And that's what's led now to the downfall and death of Spirit Airlines. So half of me says, well, the government screwed up Spirit. Spirit would be merging right now, would be with JetBlue and, probably doing as well as it's ever been under new management and leadership of JetBlue. So part of me almost wants Trump to say, look, I basically want a do-over. Let's keep it afloat, 60, 90 days, whatever, and let's go back to JetBlue and say to JetBlue, you want to put an offer again? This time I won't stop you. If you're willing to put in another $3.8 billion or whatever the figure is, and the union accepts it, the shareholders accept it, then maybe let's make a deal. So I'm literally split. Half of me says yes, the other half says no. 617-266-6868 is the number. I honestly feel bad for the employees at Spirit and those 40,000 other employees at these smaller airports who have lost their jobs because of a megalomaniac like Elizabeth Warren, who's like a child with a gun and just points it and shoots and doesn't care who she hurts or who she kills or who she destroys. 617-266-6868. Okay, you need to hear this. Here is Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg on This is CNN. Now, this was in 2023, where he says, generally the Department of Transportation, we don't get involved in mergers, but not today. Today, we are going to block JetBlue and Spirit. Why? Now, listen to the reasons that he gives, and then look at the reality of what happened a couple years later. Roll cut 16, Mike.
Our department, the Department of Transportation, has generally not gotten involved in these merger cases, but that's changing today. It is so important to make sure that passengers have choices, that they have access to low fares, that they have access to competition.
So they blocked it. They ended up blocking it. And do passengers have more choices? No, they have less choices now. Do they have access to low fares? No, the fares have gone up. In some cases by 100, even 150, 200%. Do they have access to more competition? No. Now it's less competition. So every reason that they gave to stop this merger, every reason, the exact opposite turned out to be true. Now listen to the current Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, who rips Joe Biden and Buttigieg for blocking the merger of Spirit and JetBlue. Roll cut 17, Mike.
Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg, along with the Biden DOJ, decided that they did not want that merger to take place. And at the time, the Biden and Buttigieg DOJ bragged and said, as they canceled the option for this merger, that this was a victory for U.S. travelers who deserve lower prices and better choices. Now, many at the time said this was a disaster. This merger should have been allowed. And this today would indicate this is not better for travelers. This is not better for pricing. This is not better for competition. Actually, it's worse. We had an airline go down because the markets were trying to allow two airlines to merge, make them stronger, and offer more competition for the American consumer.
Bingo. Bingo. It would have been better for passengers, better for consumers, better for competition, lower fares. Everybody would have won. Everybody would have won. And that's socialism in action. That's when bureaucrats who've never signed a paycheck in their life, who know nothing about running a business, who know nothing about the private sector or how it works, think they know better than the people who actually own and run companies and own and run a business and operate in the free market and the private sector every day. And now an entire American airline is finished and all the jobs that go with it. Now, one more cut, and I want to go back to the phone lines. Here is Transportation Secretary Duffy, Sean Duffy, saying it's Buttigieg's fault, it's Biden's fault, it's his DOJ's fault. But there's one particular person in particular, the chief. She led the crusade, and she needs to be called out. Roll cut 17A, Mike.
Also, Elizabeth Warren at the time cheered the blocking of the merger, saying that this was a Biden win for flyers. So, again, I think it's important that we always look with a keen eye when airlines want to merge. We care about pricing for consumers. We care about competition. But if the markets are saying there needs to be a merger because there's health issues with one of the airlines or more than one airline, we have to take a look at it and make sure we make the right choices. And in this situation, history has judged the denial of the merger between JetBlue and Spirit through the Biden administration with, I think, a view that it was a massive mistake.
Massive is the word. Massive. And the ripple effects are going to be with us for years and years to come. As I speak to you now, there are countless passengers still stranded. They can't get to where they need to go or go back home. Or if they have to get somewhere, they have to buy tickets from other airlines who are charging them outrageously high prices. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. This is from 514. Jeff, the globalists want to discourage air travel in order to advance their climate change agenda. Bingo. 514 continues. Probably the reason why seats are so uncomfortable. Whatever the reason. Seats are in, unless you're flying first class, obviously. But if you fly coach, as I do, because I'm not a gazillionaire, And, when I fly, I usually fly with my wife and my kids. For example, recently we went to the Bahamas for, our 30th anniversary. Let me tell you, man, I mean, my knees are still recovering. My lower back is still killing me after flying back on that flight. I mean, ay. I mean, they don't give you leg room. I'll put it to you this way. 617-266-6868. And there's no question. They don't want people flying. It's part of the Green New Deal. They're waging war on air travel, on car travel, especially if you have a fossil fuel-driven car or a gas-driven car. They want to eliminate fossil fuels. Of course, they fly on jets. They fly. They have limousines. They have SUVs. For them, they can, have gas-powered cars, and they can, as I say, fly on private jets all over the world. That's okay. They just don't want us to fly. You see, and so make traveling, air travel, such a grueling experience, such an unpleasant experience. Keep driving up ticket prices, and eventually less people will fly, which is, I believe, the intended goal. But that's just me. 617-266-6868. Pete in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Pete, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Pete?
I'm good. I used to be an airline pilot. I worked for Eastern Airlines, and a lot of people don't remember Eastern.
Oh, I remember Eastern.
There were a series of mergers that put them out, and but the reality is, under deregulation, when deregulation first came about, it was intended to make ticket prices low for the consumer. And there's hundreds and hundreds of upstart airlines that have come and gone. Because while the industry's sort of deregulated, it's not completely deregulated, because the cost of admission to get into that business, the major airports like Chicago, O'Hare, and all the New York airports have a slot system, and you can't just it costs sometimes millions to get the slots to even get into those airports. So it's never been a complete level playing field. However, when you talk about the big four airlines, every one of those big four, and the biggest, it's really the three big and then Southwest. United merged with Continental. Now, the Eastern assets went to Continental, but that's another story. Delta and Northwest, American, US Air. US Air was a collaboration of airline mergers. And so even Southwest, there were mergers. So those airlines all survived and got stronger because of that. But the reality is the big four do control the market. So all the big carriers have very powerful lobbyists. I'll tell you a quick story, which you may not believe, but when I worked for Kiwi Airlines, we were actually employee-owned. A bunch of Eastern and Pan Am pilots got together and started an airline. And we were, at one point, the second biggest airline out of Newark behind Continental. And Continental had a pretty strong lobbying firm, and they didn't really want us there. So Kiwi at one point was going through, we were going to merge with Pan Am. It was the second iteration of Pan Am, which was actually based out of Pease up in New Hampshire. But anyway, we were just getting ready to merge, and the FAA shut Kiwi down in what they called an emergency shutdown. But they never cited the reasons. I was upset because it was about the third or fourth time I lost my job, so I called up and got a hold of the FAA administrator, Jane Garvey. This was under the Clinton administration, and said, I want to talk to the administrator about this. I'm getting tired of getting put out of work. Oh, well, she's very busy, so she can't meet with you. I said, well, I'm unemployed now, and I have my calendar out, and I have all the time in the world. So to shut me up, I got a meeting with the head of the flight standards for the FAA down in Washington. I went down. He was running a little late, so I thought he was going to blow me off. But nope. I got in the office. I got an hour with him, and one of the first things he said to me that I'll never forget, he said the decision to shut down Kiwi was political. We could never do this to a big carrier, and I'll never repeat this outside the closed doors of this room. And I was shocked. I knew it was true, but I was shocked because he admitted it, and it was him and I. So, can I prove it? But that's how it works. The playing field is skewed, and certainly one of the things that hurt Spirit in the end here was the high cost of jet fuel. That's behind labor, that's the biggest cost airlines have. So, and keep in mind, President Trump did try to put a deal together with Spirit to save it. One of the problems was the creditors, they're already in bankruptcy. The creditors didn't like the deal, so that kind of blocked it. To try to bring it back now is hard because to get the airline back up and running is going to cost a lot of money, and also the the reputation now. People are very unhappy about getting caught holding the ticket, and the airlines always do it that way. Like I said, I was in that business and lost my job umpteen times, and every time it happens, it's miserable for us. But the airlines don't tell anybody, including the pilots. I had times when I got to Chicago and they said, "Find a way home because we're shut down."
Unbelievable.
So, but the reason they don't give
Pete, I got to ask you this: why? So you're saying a lot of this is political, and I agree with you completely. And it's the big four, really the big three plus Southwest, and they're calling the shots. They have very powerful lobbyists. They're lining obviously Elizabeth Warren's pockets, that's for sure. What was so dangerous about this merger between JetBlue and Spirit back in 2022? JetBlue was going to give them an all-cash offer. It was going to strengthen JetBlue's position in some of these, this new company was going to be stronger in some of these smaller, more regional markets. How much of a threat could they really have posed to the big four that it got the Biden DOJ to kill it, Buttigieg to kill it, Warren to kill it? What was the threat to the big four? I'm just curious.
Huge, big threat. But I could argue that with Kiwi. We were a pretty small airline. Continental wanted us out of the way, so they didn't want to see that. Collectively, JetBlue with Spirit would have been a more competitive airline. They would have had a little more market share. But I have to laugh because all of these other mergers I talk about have been rubber stamped all along the way, no matter who was in the White House. And so, and then this would be a relatively small merger as airline mergers went. It was part of it probably was the fact that Elizabeth Warren, and not just her, other people down in Washington, our so-called elected representatives, had money in the game. And I truly think President Trump wanted to try to save it.
Oh,
but again, there's only so much.
It was in the press for months. He was negotiating, trying to make a deal. You're dead on. Everything you said is 1,000% correct. Trump did everything in his power to try to save it. Oh, you're right. The creditors at the end balked, and that's why they walked away. But I think you put your finger on it. It was political. Yes, they didn't want JetBlue to gain a little bit more market share, but in the end, people like Warren and others had too much money in the game. They saw a chance to make a financial killing, and they did. They bought stocks in Spirit, and then they tanked it. And you buy you buy low, and then you sell high, and you let the airline collapse. And everybody else, people like you, are collateral damage. And to me, it's just beyond disgusting. Here you are, a loyal employee, working your rear end off, doing everything right. You're flying your routes. It's not easy to be flying around the country all the time. You land in a place like Chicago, and you leave your plane, and they say, "Well, hey, I got news for you, Pete. You're fired, laid off, and find your own way back home." I don't know. Take a taxi, take a train, take a bus. Bye. I mean, is this how you treat an employee? It's beyond disgusting. But this is what I mean about Elizabeth Warren, and in general, I don't understand. And Pete, by the way, thank you very much for that call. You've really given us tremendous insight. I don't understand this mentality among Democrats and liberals, progressives, whatever you want to call them, where they trust politicians as if politicians are less crooked, say, than business people. You always hear these Democrats say, business people are in it for the money. They're greedy. And what are you? What are you? You're not driven by money? No? You don't want to get richer? No. So why are politicians angels and business people devils? Can somebody explain that to me? Because Elizabeth Warren is every much of a crook as any businessman you'll find, with this one big difference. Whatever you think about the worst businessman out there, that person produces a product or a service. They add value to the economy. They make something or deliver something that has, meaning, value. People want to buy it. What does Elizabeth Warren produce? Nothing. On a good day, she produces nothing. She adds nothing. Usually, she's creating problems. She's adding red tape. She's draining wealth. She's stealing wealth. She's wrecking industries and people's lives. So I look at a politician and people say, oh, those corporations are greedy. All these business people greedy. And politicians, what, they're angels? No, they're not motivated by self-interest. They're not motivated by greed. They're not motivated by getting rich. So how come all of them come into Congress, most of them poor, can't rub two nickels together? Say, take Ayanna Pressley. She was bankrupt. No money, nothing. Ilhan Omar, no money, nothing. Elizabeth Warren, $350,000 a year, which is a very good salary, don't get me wrong, but she wasn't a gazillionaire. And they're all stinking, filthy rich. They're crooks. So you can say whatever you want about some corrupt businessman. At least the businessman makes something. What do they make except problems for you, me, and our children? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Paul in Bellingham. Thanks for holding, Paul, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Paul.
Can I do two jingles for Elizabeth Warren and then make a comment?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
You love this. Fly the friendly skies of United. And then I have another one. Delta is ready when you are. I love it. And then the comment I want to make is about Massachusetts, and you mentioned Jeff Deal. You beat me to the punch. But I remember when Jeff Deal was running against Elizabeth Warren, and I was on the road all the time. You go through all these towns, and you see millions of Deal signs and no signs for Elizabeth Warren, unless you go through the town of Wellesley, Needham, Cambridge, Somerville. Do you know what I'm saying? And then the killer was, like you said, on election night at 8:00, whatever it is, 8:01, 8:02, they're saying that she won. But not only did she win, but she won by about 28 points. I wouldn't mind if she beat Deal by 5 or 7. No, she wins by almost 30 points, which tells me the state of Massachusetts is corrupt, which we all know, and there's so much fraudulent voting, and that's why they won't do the audit, and that's why they won't let anybody see the voting list. Am I correct?
You're 1,000, not 100, as I like to say. You're 1,000% correct. And because we have a big national audience now, Paul. So just so that people understand, when Paul is saying you go through Massachusetts, at the time, the election between Deal and Elizabeth Warren, you saw Deal signs in most towns and hardly any Warren signs, except, as he mentioned, Wellesley, Needham, Cambridge, Somerville. Wellesley, Needham, those are some of the most high-end areas, wealthiest, well-to-do areas in Massachusetts. You're talking $1 million homes and way up. So that's where the limousine liberals are. So that's how dumb these people are. They vote for someone who wants to confiscate and steal their money. That's, I'm going to vote against my self-interest. Ho, 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 ho. Aren't I? Look at me. I'm Oh, I'm such a sophisticated moonbat. So that's, in other words, wealthy Democrats, elitists, vote for Elizabeth Warren. That tells you, or at least put up signs saying they're going to vote for Elizabeth Warren. That tells you everything you need to know. Liberalism is a mental disorder. Paul, thank you very much for that call. Esther in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Esther, and welcome.
Yes, Jeff, I've really enjoyed your program so much. I have two comments. I think one is maybe more of a question. When did we last have honest, investigative reporting from many, many stations instead of just conservative radio, which big money is able to blackball so that we're so divided people will not even listen to conservative radio if they have Trump derangement syndrome. You can't even get a friend or relative to listen, and then they don't get the truth because they're able to, we're so divided. And the other comment, and so maybe you could, historically, when did that happen? I remember when I was young, we would listen to the no matter what political side we were on, our whole family would listen to whoever the president was. And he was honored, and respected. But somehow they've lost respect. And the other one was just remarking on when the TSA was shut down because of lack of funds. And there were those lines, and then Trump put up the put the ice in there to help things go along. But then the other thing that happened is, I can't remember which airline it was, but they shut down the Congress's ability to get their own flights. So I think that Congress, these people take the privileges of these airlines, and they don't care about the little airlines or the ones that we have to fly on. And then they're so separate from reality. And I just think we've got to get the term limits and take away some of these privileges they have. They've got to have to go back to real life.
Esther, you hit the nail right on the head. The problem that we have is we have a ruling class, which is Congress, that is exempt from their own laws. So they don't have to deal with the consequences of the legislation or the rules that they pass. And you saw it like with the TSA. They don't pay the TSA. Many agents aren't showing up, and we're waiting in line. Many people are waiting in line, especially at some of these airports, Houston and in Florida, and 3-4 hour lines. People are massively inconvenienced. And politicians just literally sidestep the line, and they just walk right on through. It takes them less than 2 minutes to get through. And they all fly first class, and so they just sit back and relax and let the peasants suffer. No, you wait in line. If they had to wait in line like everybody else, believe me, TSA would have been fully funded. The shutdown never would have taken place. Now, as for journalism, I can just tell you from my personal experience, I can only speak to that. I clearly saw the change under Obama. I'm not saying the media was perfect before then. It wasn't. But under Obama, everything changed. Journalists no longer viewed themselves as journalists, meaning you're supposed to be, at least in theory, nonpartisan, objective, get both sides of every story, the facts. They call them the 5 W's. What, where, when, why, basically get the gist of a story. And the number one rule in journalism was never make yourself the story. We now have the exact opposite. And this really took off under Obama. It was defend the dear leader at all costs. Be an activist for the Democratic Party. Your job is to be a shill, a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, and everyone who criticizes Obama is an enemy of not just the party, but of racial justice, social justice, progress. So they really saw him as the Messiah. And their job was to install him in power. And if you notice, if you look at the election campaign of 2008, it really was a watershed. Because it was the first time in American history that a major political candidate, Barack Hussein Obama, was never officially challenged on anything. On his biography, on his stories about his background. They just accepted his lies hook, line, and sinker. And from that moment, journalism was completely corrupted. Okay, just very, very quickly, an exclamation point to what I was saying just before we went to break about when journalism really changed and was corrupted in this country. And I'm not saying it was great before Obama, but you clearly saw a change after the dear leader ran for the presidency and won in 2008. And the media covered up deliberately the fact that Obama was anti-white, clearly anti-white. He was a racist, clearly anti-American, and clearly a Muslim socialist. He wanted to transform the United States not just into a socialist superstate, but clearly now in retrospect, he wanted to Islamicize the United States, and he wanted to give Iran the bomb. His goal was to strengthen radical Islam both within America and outside of America. And the media knew that. They knew it. And they swept it under the rug. They hid it from the American people. And he was completely unvetted by the media in 2008. In fact, not only was he not vetted, as I said, they covered up for him. And that was, to me, really the end of journalism, the death of journalism in the United States. And it's only gotten worse. And he went, Jeremiah Wright, you remember him, G damn America. He went to an anti-American, anti-white church for 30 years. For 30 years. And by the way, it's all coming out. He was, he hid the fact that he was gay. He was a closet homosexual. And it's all coming out now about letters to his girlfriend, about how he fantasizes about becoming gay, and how but he won't become gay because it's not enough of a challenge. Anyway, it's pretty obvious that he led a secret life. It's his business, but I'm just saying that he led a secret life that was very different from the public image. And this man had a radical agenda to transform and destroy the United States of America. And Biden was his third term. And I'm telling you, had Trump not won in 2024, Kamala Harris would have finished off what what Obama started. Remember, Obama handpicked Kamala Harris. Obama insisted that Kamala be Biden's VP. Obama knew that Kamala would follow his orders to the T, to the letter. And so, the fourth term would have been literally, that's it. It would have been, the coffin, the last nail in the coffin of the United States of America. She truly posed an existential threat to the United States. We never would have come back had Trump lost the election in 2024. And the media covered up Biden. They covered up his age, the fact that he was his senility. They covered up everything, that he was the auto pen president, that there was a cabal running him, and they knew it was a cabal that was running him. We did not have a real president for 4 years. We had a walking cadaver, a walking corpse as president. with Obama pulling the strings, and the media lied. And I could go on and on and on. So to me, the media is not the media. Even to say the word media is an injustice. It's the communications mouthpiece of the Democratic National Committee. That's what they are. They are Democratic propagandists, Democrat activists with the title journalism. That's what they've become. And what they're covering up is not just a socialist transformation of the Democratic Party, a takeover, but the attempts to completely take over the United States as well. And don't even take my word for it. Listen now to Fetterman. This is Senator John Fetterman. He's a Union Democrat. He's a liberal. By the way, he's very liberal on many issues. Fetterman is a liberal Democrat, but he's pro-union, pro-worker. In other words, he has a foot in reality. He would have been a standard Democrat even 15 years ago. Listen to him now discuss what's happening to his party and how it's been taken over. By the way, before I get to Fetterman, here is Senator John Kennedy on Fox. I'll get to Fetterman. How much time left, Mike? All right. I'm going to play two cuts on the other side. You have to hear this. One is Senator John Kennedy, Republican, Louisiana, and the other one is Fetterman. I want you to hear Fetterman. Okay, listen now to Senator John Kennedy, Louisiana Republican, on Fox. And he is now describing the modern Democratic Party and who's running it. And you'll understand this is Elizabeth Warren's party now. And Graham Plattner, that self-avowed communist up in Maine, who now is going to be the Democratic nominee to challenge Susan Collins, Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. This is the wing, this Marxist socialist lunatic wing that is now running the Democratic Party. This is no longer the party of John F. Kennedy or Harry Truman, the Union Democrats, the pro-working class Democrats. Those days are long, long gone. Roll cut 28. Mike.
And the faction in control of the Democratic Party is what I call the Loon Wing or the Karen Wing. Some call it the Socialist Wing. Its leaders are Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Mayor Mamdani, elder statesman is Bernie Sanders. Mr. Plattner is a member. They have deeply weird beliefs. They think that kids should be able to change genders at recess. A lot of the Looners hyperventilate on their yoga mats if you use the wrong pronoun. They think cops are a bigger problem than criminals. They believe in open borders, which is why they want to defund ICE. That's what we're fighting over right now in Washington, D.C. They're angry.
They're full of hate, but, I let that go. He nailed it. They favor criminals over victims. They want to change the genders of 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. They want a boy to think he's a girl. They want a girl to think she's a boy. I mean, this is how sick these people are. They want to defund and abolish ICE because they want to reopen the border as they did under Biden and destroy this country through one last massive migrant invasion, which, by the way, is exactly what they will do should they come back and sweep back to power in 2026 and control both the House and the Senate. So this is now the party of the Democrats. Listen now to Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman, a Union Democrat, a working class Democrat, by the way, a liberal Democrat, but he's semi-sane. And he's saying, look, you want to know what the real meaning of Graham Plattner becoming now the Democratic nominee? And again, I know we talked about it last week, but remember, Graham Plattner, the guy with the SS Nazi tattoo on his chest, an avowed communist, doesn't have just communist ideas or beliefs. He goes, no, I'm a communist. I'm telling you, that's what I want. I want communism. I want collectivism in the United States of America. Knocked off a 2-term sitting Democrat governor, Janet Mills, because Mills now, who's radically pro-abortion, who has turned Maine into a sanctuary state, who wants to defund the police, who wants to defund ICE, who's pro-transgenderism in the schools, is not left-wing enough. Listen now to Fetterman saying this is a different animal. What you're seeing, this Democratic Party today, is a very different animal, even of the Democratic Party of 15 years ago. It is so radical, so extreme, so unhinged. I don't recognize it anymore. This is what the Plattner nomination means. Roll cut 29, Mike.
And now there is kind of a small communist takeover in Maine. You know, Plattner, he's already announced that he's an avowed communist. He's made that statement, and he put that online. Now he's going to be the Democratic nominee. So there is a resurgence about the socialism, and that's becoming more and more part of it. And now there's more. It's like a marriage of the Palestinian, the anti-ICE, the abolish ICE, and now turning it in to like an orgy of socialism here. And that's sad, because it's supposed to be about labor, like unions. I'm a proud pro-union Democrat, but the kinds of mess that you see are showing up in many of them. I mean, that is the worst impulses that our party continues. We just seems to can't resist those things.
Oh, that's the thing. You can't resist them. You now have Barney Frank. Barney Frank. You remember Barney Frank? Massachusetts Democrat, a moonbat. Hardcore liberal, Barney, who now apparently is in hospice up in Maine. It looks like he's going to die very soon. And so he's doing interviews. Barney Frank, openly gay Democrat, says that his party has become so unhinged, so far to the left, he does not recognize it anymore. Barney Frank. That's how you get an Elizabeth Warren, who now is like a senior statesman or stateswoman in the Democratic Party, who wields the kind of clout that now destroys airlines and takes credit for it. And she's proud of it. That's now the modern Democratic Party. And that's what the media is now aiding and abetting every step of the way. Every step of the way. I want to read one text message, and then I'm going to go right back to the phone lines. 617-266-6868. If you want to text the Kuhner Man, 70470. 70470. This is from 603. Jeff, here is where Spirit Airlines made a big mistake. They didn't cut the check for Elizabeth Warren big and fast enough. When your country is being run by a criminal cartel that has taken up shop within that government, if you've got a major interest on the line, like a company or a corporation, you better make darn sure the members of that cartel get their palms good and greased, baby. If not, then prepare to have your story told on the Kuhner Report. It's true. The big mistake Spirit Airlines made was they didn't cut her a big enough check. Had they cut her a big enough check, believe me, that merger would have gone through. JetBlue would have bought Spirit, $3.8 billion. They would have rubber stamped it, and 14,000 Spirit Airlines employees, 14,000 Spirit Airlines employees would have a job today. And the other 40,000 that just got their jobs killed in these smaller airports. So that was their fundamental mistake. When you have socialism, you have a criminal cabal. That's what socialism fundamentally is. It empowers a criminal cabal to run, exploit, and drive your country into the ground. And that's what the Democratic Party is. It's essentially now a criminal political organization. And everybody's got to get their beaks wet. They all got to wet their beaks. Everybody's got to get paid. Or as the texter puts it, their palms greased. If their palms aren't greased, forget it. They bury you. Just ask Spirit Airlines. 617-266-6868 is the number. Agree, disagree. Charlie in Wilmington. Thanks for holding, Charlie, and welcome.
Listen, I don't want to get off the topic today, but I tried calling last Friday, so I'm just going to make it quick about the shooter there that, and as you said, that they were saying that he was white. I was just wondering, he scoots, kind of like Pocahontas. I wonder what his, when he checked off for a race to get the job. But that, as you said, that's one on the bridge. But what I wanted to talk about today is, Spirit Airlines, okay? Like you said, that the seats were hard, but they were all leather. But people don't know that they have the youngest fleet, all the planes in the whole business. And I have family who are pilots, okay? And I can't believe it's been 30 years. But it's just a total disgrace. If you look back over 30 years, Spirit has not had any crashes or anything, but they just pretty much cut off.
You're right, Charlie. They had a very good safety record. They did. I mean, their planes, I said, their seats are uncomfortable, small, not much leg room. But look, you can get a flight for $100. What I'm saying is, okay, you didn't get much. I mean, you barely, you could barely sit in one of those seats. And there was practically I think there was no service. I don't think they even offered you a little drink or a bag of pretzels. But you're paying $100 a ticket or $150 a ticket. And that was the value of Spirit. You can fly at a very cheap price. And you got, no frills. You didn't get much in return, but okay. But if, it's up to the consumer. And you're right. They didn't have crashes. They had a good safety record. Okay, my friends, I'm going to continue to take your calls, I promise. However, there is another major story. It broke last week. It's picked up even more steam over the weekend. And you want to talk about a corrupt media and covering up for the crimes of the Democratic Party. And in many ways, the crimes of the deep state, in this case, the medical deep state. You got to listen now to this. It has now come out through a Senate report, through Senator Ron Johnson and the subcommittee that he heads, that we were systematically lied to. The United States public, the American public, was lied to by our public health officials, the leadership at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health, led by Chicken Little Tony Fauci. And there was a major indictment last week of Fauci's right-hand man, Dr. David Morenz. And he has been indicted now by the DOJ on multiple charges of destroying evidence and of engaging in a conspiracy to cover up the origins of COVID-19, in particular, that it came through a leak in a lab in Wuhan, China. And what the DOJ has now exposed is beyond damning. It is beyond damning. It should send chills down the spines of every single American. And I mean, they have him dead to rights. So here is exactly what has now been unveiled. Dr. David Morenz, who, again, top senior advisor to Fauci at the National Institutes of Health, was in constant correspondence with the then president of EcoHealth Alliance, Peter Daszak. Now, that name should ring a bell to most of you because it was Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance that funneled the money that was given to him by Fauci, by Morenz, by the National Institutes of Health to support gain-of-function research, which is a nice way of saying biological weapons research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology over many years. Millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars were illegally siphoned through EcoHealth Alliance and then from EcoHealth Alliance to that lab in Wuhan. And Dr. David Morenz, and they've got him now on the emails. There's no getting out of this. In which he deliberately is telling Daszak, after they're giving him money, and now the virus is out, COVID-19 is out. It's February 2020, March 2020, April 2020. Trump is still president, obviously. Fauci now becomes the face of the response to the COVID so-called pandemic. And David Morenz tells Daszak, we have to cover up our involvement in funding the gain-of-function research in Wuhan. I'm worried we're going to get FOIA'd, or FOIA, using the Freedom of Information Act. And he said, we can't get FOIA, we got to prevent this. Get a FOIA request. So how do we do this? A, destroy the evidence, and B, put everything on my Gmail account, my private email. He tells Daszak, don't email me on my official government account because that can be FOIA'd. And if you get a FOIA account, members of Congress can FOIA, can ask for a FOIA. The senators can ask for a FOIA. Journalists or news outlets can ask for a FOIA. So you don't want to have a Freedom of Information Act come in and ask, a demand that you hand over these public records. So do everything beneath, underneath the radar by using a private email, my private email. We have to destroy evidence and conceal evidence that they were involved not just in funding this so-called gain-of-function research, but that the leak came from the lab in Wuhan. If you remember, Fauci goes on about that this came from a bat market, either from bats or monkeys at an open market. And what did he use as proof? An article by David Morenz and Peter Daszak. And he starts literally saying, well, the literature says, the science says that, look at this, Dr. David Morenz, Dr. Peter Daszak, they say it came from monkeys and bats in an open market. There's no evidence it came through the lab in Wuhan. Those were the people who were trying to conceal the fact that the lab leak took place in Wuhan. And that's what led to the COVID pandemic, and that they were funding this dangerous research in that very lab. So the people that were co-conspirators is the very people that he used to try to justify why the lab leak was a lie and a fantasy, and the media kept suppressing it over and over again, saying you were a conspiracy theorist. You were damaging public science and public health if you dare to even suggest that it could have come from a lab in Wuhan, when now we know it definitely came from a lab in Wuhan. And so they were concealing and destroying evidence. And there is one email exchange in particular where Morenz tells Daszak, we have to destroy everything to protect Tony. Well, who's Tony? Fauci. That's who Tony is. Now, it gets even worse. So not only were they deliberately involved and implicated in the creation of this virus, that in that lab that was released to the public, whether it was accidental or deliberate at this point is irrelevant. They knew and they lied and then they covered it up. But it gets even worse, because they knew that they and Fauci funded it, and they tried to cover that up. But then it gets even worse. It now comes out through this thorough Senate investigation and through internal emails that the Health and Human Services Department has now uncovered and released to the public, that under Joe Biden, there was tremendous pressure being put on top FDA officials who were noticing over and over and over and over again that the vaccines that were being rolled out in December of 2020, in January of 2021, February, March, April, May, June, all the way until September 2021. Remember, Biden is installed in power in January 2021. That people were reporting and that they were discovering adverse side effects to both the vaccine and the boosters. Bell's palsy, myocarditis, especially in young men from 18 to about the early 30s, enlarged hearts, people over 65, it wasn't many, but it was a small percentage, were getting strokes directly connected to the mandate and the boosters, the vaccine mandate and the boosters. And they covered it up. In fact, there are emails where they're pressuring top FDA officials. Why are you sending this information around? Cease and desist. Stop. We don't want the public to know about this. This is a threat, according to them, to science, to the public reputation of the Biden regime. Because if you remember, it's a lot of water under the bridge, as they say. But in the first year of Biden's presidency, Biden wanted to be known for one thing above all else, that he defeated COVID, that he won over COVID. And that's why he pushed the vaccine mandate. That's why he pushed the lockdowns. That's why, if you remember, he tried to mandate that every government employee and any employee in a large company, whether they like it or not, must be forced to take the vaccine against their will, if need be. The jab or your job, as he put it. And so they didn't want anything that would contradict the political narrative that the Biden administration now was spinning to the American people, even though they knew that the vaccine and the boosters did not stop the transmission of COVID-19. So if it doesn't stop transmission, what's the point of forcing people to take the jab? On top of that, they knew it was getting people killed. They knew it. The evidence is now there. It's irrefutable. People were dying of strokes. People were dying of heart attacks. Young men were suffering myocarditis and dropping dead. People were getting Bell's palsy. And what was particularly chilling is that they also found evidence, substantial evidence, that a minority, but a considerable minority of women were now young women in their 20s and 30s were having problems with their menstrual period, their menstrual cycle, their period. They kept missing their period. Now they're finding out it led to infertility. And they knew all of this. All of this. And they were told, cover it up. Don't tell the public about this. Don't release these reports. They had weekly reports, and they said, it's every week. We're finding more and more examples of this. The vaccine was not properly tested. The vaccine was rushed to market. The vaccine, for some, not the majority, but for some, was clearly having dangerous adverse effects. They had a legal, moral, ethical obligation to release this information to the public, and they didn't. Why? Why? Because Big Pharma had a fortune now hanging on this. And Fauci and Biden were spinning the political narrative that it was the jab and the boosters that would bring COVID-19 to heel, that these two men were going to ride off into the sunset as the ones who had conquered COVID. And so they allowed people to take the jab, even though they knew that it posed a public health risk and hazard to some people's lives. And they had the scientific evidence right in front of them every step of the way. In fact, you're right, Sandy. They didn't allow it. They made them take the jab. They forced them through the vaccine mandate, knowing that some were going to die of a heart attack or a stroke or get facial paralysis, or that women would be, God forbid, lose their ability to be fertile, to have children. It would mess up their menstrual cycle. Older people, some of them drop dead of strokes. They made them take it. If no one else has the guts to say it, I'm going to say it. They committed crimes against humanity. That's what this is. And now the question is David Morenz, Dr. David Morenz, is he going to flip on Chicken Little? And by the way, there are others that have been arrested now as well, including one at Boston University, another fraud. And to show you how corrupt this all was, as Morenz was helping to funnel grant money into the pockets of EcoHealth Alliance, Peter Daszak was sending Morenz expensive bottles of wine from California. And I'm going to read, if you want, I can read to you the emails where they're openly saying this is a bribe. Ha, 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 ha. and we hope this relationship continues. And then Dasick says, we want to take you out to the best French restaurant. On us. Trips, on us. All the wine you can drink, on us. Just keep the money coming. Listen now to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., HHS Secretary. And in testimony in front of Congress, he is asked by Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn, was COVID-19 politicized? Listen now to RFK Jr.'s response. Roll cut 95, Mike.
You believe COVID-19 was politicized?
Yeah, the whole process was politicized. Senator, I mean, we were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission. They prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start. It wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed.
Now, not only did they know, they covered it up. That's what these internal emails now reveal that have now been released to the public. This is one of the most damning reports I've ever read in my life. And this should be front page news everywhere. Again, talking about a corrupt media because they were complicit, because the media were pushing Biden's lie. And to remind everybody, and this is how Orwellian it was, when Trump was still in power, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said, don't take the jab. Don't take the vaccine. This was, quote unquote, Trump's vaccine. Don't take it. Don't trust it. The moment they got in power and the money from Big Pharma was pouring in, they did a complete 180. The very same vaccine that they said, don't take it, don't trust it, it's Trump's vaccine. Suddenly they said, not only take it, we're going to force you to take it. We're going to mandate you to take it. And moonbats being like moonbats, okay, yeah. Well, Joey says it's safe, so I'm going to take it. They knew that 6 feet social distancing did nothing. They made it up. They just made it up. There was no scientific basis to it whatsoever. They admit that. In internal emails and documents, they admit it. They closed down schools that badly damaged the future development of millions and millions of American children on the basis of a lie, 6 feet social distancing. And it was done by the teachers' union. The teachers' union, not scientists, the teachers' union wrote the protocols for shutting down the schools. You have kids now whose IQ has been permanently changed because of it. Many of them committed suicide. Others have mental health issues because of the school closures. The face masks. The science showed it no work. It no work. Fauci knew it, and he still pushed the mask mandate. Biden knew it, and he still pushed the mask mandate. So not only were people forced to take a vaccine that they knew for some was deadly, not only did they close down schools, shut down the entire economy, eliminate countless businesses, shut down churches, violated people's fundamental civil rights, the greatest violation of civil rights in the history of the United States. Mass violation. There's no question. They did it to promote a vaccine that they knew did not work. It did not prevent transmission. It did not prevent infection. They knew that. And they did it to cover up two things. One, that this was a lab leak from China that we helped to fund. This virus was something that our government helped to fund. And then it leaked into the world, and now they had a PR problem, a nightmare. 617-266-6868 is the number. I want to read this from Paul. Good morning, Jeff. Well, good morning, Paul. I agree with you about the vaccine mandates. My wife had a heart attack 3 years ago, and it all happened after she had the COVID shot. She never had a heart condition or problem before. Today, she is doing fine, thank goodness, and she hasn't been taking it ever since, so no boosters. I agree. I believe it was the COVID vaccine that caused her problems. However, he says that his wife says no, that she doesn't think it was related to COVID. He, though, is convinced it is. So, I don't know. There's a disagreement there. But, Paul, you're not the only one. Countless millions and millions of people around the world who were forced to take the jab. And I don't know if your wife was forced or she just voluntarily chose to take it. But those that were forced to take it had strokes, had heart attacks, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, problems with their menstrual cycle, problems with fertility. I could go on and on. All kinds of cysts in their bodies. You name it, they've had all kinds of adverse effects. Again, it's a minority. It's not the majority. But still, they had a duty and an obligation to reveal that to the public, and they deliberately covered it up. And that, to me, two things are unforgivable. That they completely covered this up, and now it is irrefutable that they covered it up. And B, that they still mandated, forced people to take it, knowing that for some, it was a potential death sentence. Listen now to RFK Jr. saying they lied about everything, not just the actual jab, but about the 6 feet social distancing, the cloth masks, the science in quote unquote behind the school shutdowns. They lied about it all. Roll cut 95A, Mike.
We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based.
That's why public health has never been more distrusted in our lifetime. What they did is they squandered the trust of countless Americans because they lied to us over and over and over again. And this came straight from the very top. And it corrupted the CDC, the FDA, the National Institutes of Health. We went straight up from Fauci. Everything was politicized. And Americans died and paid the price. Now, again, I want you to listen to RFK Jr. He's saying then they were pushing the boosters. And they knew, especially with the elderly, those 65 and above, big story in the New York Post, huge story, where it's now come out that they knew internally, they have the emails. Again, it's not for majority, but for a significant minority of the elderly, over 65 and above, that if you kept pushing them to take boosters, it was leading to strokes. And when 2 of the top epidemiologists and virologists in the country at the CDC said, stop, you're getting people killed or you're making them very sick, These are debilitating adverse effects. Stop. The data is showing it. They were forced out of the CDC or the FDA. Listen now to RFK Jr., roll cut 96, Mike.
During COVID, probably the most famous scientist on ACIP was Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, the great, world-renowned epidemiologist and vaccinologist. And he criticized the COVID booster mandates. They ejected him from COVID because he wasn't in the orthodoxy. The two biggest health officials at FDA during COVID, Dr. Gruber and Dr. Krause, criticized the Biden mandates, vaccine mandate. President Biden said in August, I would never take that vaccine, the Trump vaccine. And he came in, he mandated it, and then he fired the two top health officials at FDA who said, hey, this thing has not been properly tested. So the whole process was politicized.
Of course it was. And they knew it was politicized, and they still allowed it to go on. Now, one final point, then I want to go to the phone lines, 617-266-6868. I'm getting a lot of texts, emails from people saying, do you think this guy, Dr. David Morenz, the one who was indicted last week, really Fauci's top right-hand man, will he turn on Fauci? Will he flip on Fauci? I don't know. He's staring at the rest of his life in prison. And they've got him 6 ways to Sunday. He's going down. But what you see in the email exchanges is that Morenz looks at Fauci almost like he's a god.
Earlier today, our medical experts announced a plan for booster shots to every fully vaccinated American, adult American. This will boost your immune response. It will increase your protection from COVID-19. It's the best way to protect ourselves from new variants that could arise. The plan is for every adult to get a booster shot 8 months after you got your second shot.
That was Joe Biden in August of 2021. And when you look now at all this new information that has been revealed in the last week, and I mean internal documents and emails, and exchanges within his own Health and Human Services Department, within his own CDC, within his own FDA, where they are openly saying booster shots are leading to people dying of heart attacks and strokes and getting Bell's palsy and myocarditis. And they covered it all up. Not just covered it up, you just heard him. He was going to force this on everybody. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. That's why the Kuhner man has been saying for a long time, I want Fauci. I want Fauci. Give David Morenz a sweetheart deal. I don't care. I know he was his right-hand man. I know he played a key role in all this, but I want Fauci more than I want anybody else because he was the mastermind. He's the one that needs to pay. Agree, disagree. 9:34 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Gretchen in Burlington. Thanks for holding, Gretchen, and welcome.
So I have a story about my husband who, right before COVID, got liver cancer that metastasized to the bone. And he had gotten his shot, but then oncologists, they told him he needed to get the booster shot, and he got it, even though I said don't do it. And that night he started feeling bad, and meanwhile he started off doing immunotherapy with the cancer, and he was doing really well on it. That was every week, and they did blood work. Then, after he got the booster shot, he started feeling worse. Went back to the oncologist. They did blood work. Get a call from the oncologist about a week later saying that he had a very rare and aggressive bone cancer. And when he was feeling worse, I talked to the pharmacist, I talked to his primary care, I talked to oncology. They're saying, we don't know enough about it to tell you what's going on. So luckily, the oncologist found something that he's still alive, thank God. But it's not just, the myocarditis and all the other things. I think that it's causing cancer in a lot of young people.
Well, I have a dear friend, and I'm very sorry to hear about your husband. I mean, I'm happy he's still fighting. God bless him. But still, I mean, cancer is no joke. And I agree with you, Gretchen. I think the booster probably did lead to that aggressive, rare bone cancer. I have a dear friend. We go back 25 now, 30 years. She's a friend of my friend, Grace's friend as well. And she took the jab at work. They forced her. And then they forced her to take a booster. And she's got this rare cancer in her uterus where they're saying basically they can keep her alive for another couple of years, but eventually it's going to kill her. And she was never sick before, ever. Her mother, no cancer. Father, no cancer. Grandparents, no cancer. No history of cancer whatsoever in her family. And she's saying, I'm telling you, I did not feel well especially after the booster. And it was shortly thereafter where they diagnosed the cancer. So she and her husband are convinced that the booster gave her this rare cancer. And there's been other strange cancers listed as one of the adverse effects. I mean, the heart one is so prevalent. And when I say prevalent, I mean millions of people have reported it. That's why it gets more of the attention. But no, I agree with you, Gretchen. I think there's no question. For some people, it led to these bizarre, unique, weird cancers developing. And they knew it. See, if they didn't know it, okay. But they knew it. And they still not only pushed it, as Sandy rightly said, they were forcing people to take it. That's, to me, what is so unconscionable. And they made money every time a jab was injected in a person's body. It was all about the freaking money. And people like your poor husband now have to pay the consequences. Gretchen, final word to you.
They're still pushing it. You go to the drugstore, the pharmacy and stuff, and they still have their signs out for booster, booster, booster. Cut it out already, people.
Amen. Amen.
Ridiculous. And you know what?
Go ahead, Gretchen. Please finish your point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
God bless your friend. I hope she does well. I hope maybe they'll find something that can help her. But she'll be in my thoughts and prayers.
Your husband will be in my thoughts and prayers. And
thank you so much. And
take care, Gretchen, and please give your husband my best. By the way, true story. I'm at the airport, and we're heading back from the Bahamas to Boston. And the only place, where you have like a gate C9, gate C10, whatever. The only gate where you see people still with that face mask is the one going from the Bahamas to Boston. There are flights going to Houston, flights going to Florida, flights going to Chicago, flights going to, other places, but only the ones going to Boston. There they are with their face masks. Oh, they love those face masks. And you're like, they're the Moonbats. What is it now, 5 years? And they're still wearing the damn face mask. That's how much COVID and the propaganda scared them. 617-266-6868. They're never going to take those masks off. Logan in Northborough. Thanks for holding, Logan, and welcome.
Jeff, great show. First-time caller.
Welcome, Logan. Welcome.
Thank you. Biden got the jab like 5 times. I think he got COVID 6 times. So I think they had saline in that needle. You got to prove to me that was a real jab, because I don't believe it. But I just want to piggyback on your original point about when it turned that reporting was political. And, of course, Woodward and Bernstein was a crucial time in the 70s. And those two 80-year-olds still turn up every once in a while and embarrass themselves. But I think you left out one little point. There was the Barack Obama narrative, but there was one brave soul who challenged it. His name was Donald Trump, and he questioned the birth certificate. And I think that was the unforgivable sin which cast him out from the garden. I think that's really why, all these years later, they cannot stop hating him, because he was an infidel. He challenged Allah, you know, and what happened at that White House dinner when Obama, still furious about that insult, you know, the birth certificate, he called out Donald Trump as Citizen Trump, and he embarrassed him, and that led to Trump, by many accounts, deciding to run for president. So the whole thing is this amazing unified field theory, where it just becomes a little loop. And yeah, so, you know, I really think that Trump questioning the birth certificate really started the ire that is just the unforgivable sin.
You nailed it. They never forgave him for that. The Democrats didn't, Obama didn't, obviously, and the media. And that's all the same. But the media and Democrats is interchangeable. And no matter what Trump said or did, they were determined to destroy him. Because you're right, he committed the unforgivable sin. He actually started to expose Obama's real background and where he really came from and his real story. They had concocted a fake narrative to fool the American people. And all you had to do was just the basic reporting, just the most basic, and you would have seen what a liar and a fraud Obama was. But anyway, it's all water under the bridge now. Look, Obama has been exposed. If you want to see who he really is, all you have to do is open your eyes. But you're right. It was Trump who did it, and that's why they were out to destroy him from that very moment. Great call, Logan. Don't be a stranger. Call again. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let me ask all of you, should Fauci be held accountable? Okay, my friends, you know what this means. Monday, final segment. It's time for Talkback Tit for Tat. Your voices, your reactions, your heart. The true heartbeat of Kuhner country. We asked, you answered, and now we're sharing the best of this week's messages. Take it away, Mike.
Jeff, for the love of God, will you stop calling them the Democratic Party? It's the Democrat Party. There's nothing democratic about them. It's the Democrat Party. Please call them as such.
Mike and Sandy are right, Jeff. Ashton and Ava, they rule you, bro. That's all there is to it. They will take you to the next Marvel movie, no matter what you say, bro.
Hey, oh, Michael, please stop cutting the Kuhner man off. Mucho gracias.
Jeff, the way that you are characterizing people who smoke marijuana is incorrect. We're not all burnouts.
I really think they need to reopen Obama's chef's drowning in the ocean late at night while he was surfing because he was drunk. You can't tell me Obama didn't buy them off to make that go away.
We are fighting a global war. Get over it. Suck it up. Trump will take care of it.
Jeff, stop the overzealous right-wing stuff. Make him take his shirt off every rally.
There's nobody better than Jeff Kuhner. On the airwaves, on YouTube, on X, whatever.
The audience gets dumber and dumber by the day. You're all on your knees with your straight Trump worship.
You know, my favorite of all the messages, they're all very good, by the way. Even the nasty moon bats. I love it when they call and they get so blown, so pushed out of shape, You guys are on your knees worshiping Trump. But the one is, no, Mike and Sandy are right. Ashton and Ava rule you. You're going to take them to Dr. Doom. You may say you're boycotting Disney. You're going to take them to Dr. Doom. That's exactly what Mike says, what Sandy says, and what Grace says. So, We'll see. 617-266-6868. Please continue to leave messages. We're going to play them every Monday, last segment. And honestly, anything goes. Russ in Boston on the iHeartRadio app. Thanks for reminding me, Mike. On the iHeartRadio app, and just click on the red microphone and just let her rip. All right, we got Russ in Boston. Russ, as always, thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff, first of all, it was nice to hear from a former pilot of Eastern Airlines. It was a great airline with caring employees. Believe me, I miss flying Eastern Airlines. It's just a shame such a great airline was forced out of business. Okay. Now, let's face the facts. Obama is the leader of the enemy within. The majority of mass voters are politically stupid. They voted for Obama, Biden, and Harris. Today's Democratic Party is the Communist Party. Job one, divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. That's what their mission is, to destroy this country the way we know it. And where were the No Kings for protesters when King Biden forced the so-called vaccine? They were nowhere to be found, were they? Those fools, okay? Nowhere to be found. Believe me when I say this, Jeff, I fear the midterms. We patriotic Americans must not allow the enemy within derail our great political savior, President Donald Trump.
Russ, do you think Fauci will ever pay a price?
You know, Jeff, believe me when I say this, you know, in this country today, victims be damned, honest to God. Our leaders could care less about victims, okay? There's no question that he's a scumbag fraud. And let me give you the best example that I can give you. Years ago, both my parents would get the flu shot. Both of them got pneumonia. Both of them ended into the hospital. And I asked my mother's doctor, I don't understand this. My parents get the flu shot and she explained to me. She says, every so often there's a new strain that comes out that's not covered by the shot. And hopefully by next year's shot, it will be covered. Okay? Now, knowing that, just being a layperson, being told that by a doctor, okay? I knew when the vaccine came out that there's no way they could predict whether a variant would come out in 6 months, 6 years, or whatever, okay? And for that scumbag to tell people to take the vaccine, okay, and as if, you know, that was a smart thing to do. It was totally untested compared to all other drugs. And it was insane. And, Jeff, I'm telling you, I'm so disgusted with my fellow citizens. Remember, Charlie Baker had an 80% approval rating as far as taking the shot was concerned. In that scumbag Mara Healey, as the Attorney General, did nothing to even save state police from losing their jobs. I'm telling you, Jeff, I'm so disgusted with the voters of Massachusetts.
No, I'm with you.
Believe me.
And you're right. Police officers lost their jobs. Nurses lost their jobs. Firefighters lost their jobs. Corrections facilities officers, they lost their jobs. I can't tell you how many people lost their jobs just in this state. Never mind around the whole country. To take something that they all knew could potentially give them a heart attack or give them cancer, or if, you know, for a woman out there, maybe if she wants to have a baby, and she's going to make her infertile. These people are sick. Honestly, they're demonic. Now, I know Biden. Now you know why, by the way, the Biden auto pen issued a preemptive pardon to Biden. Sorry, to Fauci. Now you know why Biden's people issued that preemptive pardon. Because they knew he was guilty of sin. The auto pen, to me, should be null and void. The pardon should be null and void. And I hope Todd Blanche's people are listening and go after Chicken Little and make an example out of him. Because he needs to be exposed for the fraud, the phony, and the murderer that he is.